Hello and welcome to Genealogy Quick Start. We are very excited to have you here today for another wonderful set of two quick starts. And again, I don't know how this happens, but somehow when we create the quick starts separately, they come together. And so today we're going to talk about one of the best, I would say, slightly beyond beginner technique in genealogy called the fan club. And so I'm Shamel Jordan, I'm your host, and let me tell you about what we're doing today. Today we have two quick starts, and the first one is going to be fanning the funeral. So I don't know if you know what a fan club is, but I will tell you. It's an acronym that was created by a very famous genealogist. Her name is Elizabeth Shown Mills, and she taught that not only should you look for your direct ancestor, it's important that you also look for your other family members, friends, associates, and neighbors. And today we have two quick starts who will show you how you can do that. And so you know what to do. We're so excited to have you here. If you're here, please in the chat put down where you are. And if you're a member of a genealogy group, we definitely want you to represent, because you never know, there could be some genealogy souls out there that need saving. So it's time for me to bring on the number one quick starters. Oh, I didn't tell you who's here. How did I did not do that? Yes, we have a super special guest. Her name is Tammy Ozier, and she is a fabulous genealogist. Oh my gosh, her quick start is going to be quite amusing. We look forward to sharing that. She's doing digging up a much right man. What is a much right man? It sounds like that's the kind of man I need, a much right man. Well, Tammy is going to explain to us what does that even mean. So now, without further ado, let me bring on some of my favorite quick starters. Where are they? There they are. First up, columnist and editor, James M. Beidler. Hello, Jimbo.
Hello,
And
Shamil.
next up, we have genealogy tip of the day, Michael John Neill. Hello, Michael. Our heads are like majorly indifferent yet. Come on. Yeah, thank you. Hey, guys. So how have you been doing? Have you had any cool genealogy finds lately? I'm not going to ask you if you know what a do right man is. Are you a do right man?
Well, you stole my line. I was going to say that's my man for you, but
So how you guys doing? Anything cool in genealogy land?
Cats are always cool. Finding things on the full text search. I'm still finding things on full text search. That's probably the coolest thing.
So I don't even know if we had a full text search conversation, but oh my gosh, if you're not using familysearch.org labs and taking advantage of the full text search, you are not doing genealogy in 2020. You're not doing genealogy. So do a Google for Family Search Labs and go in there and start searching your ancestors. I had a really cool thing happen to me, really quick story. Names are important, even though spelling doesn't count in genealogy. I had an enslaver named J.J. Williams. That's what you saw all the time, J.J. And what I found out because of the full text search is that's what the white people called him. The black people called him Joe John. I'm working for Joe John. So when I put in Joe John, it was like the plantation was bubbling up because all of these people, all of this fan club started showing up. So the full text search is definitely an amazing place to be. Let's see, we have some folks here who told us who they are and where they are. And of course, hello, Gwendolyn Gay. Gray. I'm not sure, but the video, maybe you should minimize the chat. I'm not sure. But thanks for saying hi. I hope you figure it out. Hi, Cassie Adams from Augs, Cleveland. Nice to have you here. Hello, Cecilia Mathieu Charles. I hope I said that right, from Texas. Augs, Houston. Yes, I love Augs, Houston. You guys are near the have the access to the Clayton Library, one of the top 10 genealogy libraries in the country. Hi, Gary Franklin from Toledo, Ohio. Augs, AAGS in Cleveland, and Augs in Chicago. Yes, Gary Franklin is a admitted genealogy junkie. Hello, Anita Payne from TNGS, Tennessee, as well as AAGS in Fayette County, Tennessee History Group. Another junkie. Hello, Quiet Fire from Georgia. I'm scared. Hi, Mwasa, I think that is, from Georgia. Nice to have you. And yes, Gary is co-signing. Full text search is the place to be. And hi, Rhonda Barrow from Augs, Atlanta. Thank you all for being here. So, Jim and Michael, you are always so thoughtful in what you come up to help people with their genealogy. And to this week is no different. And you have a quick start. Fanning the funeral. So could you explain exactly what that is?
Well, these are those times when you've got a funeral in the South in the summertime and the electricity's off, so you've got to have some kind of fan. No, bad joke. We're going to think about who interacted with the funeral, because the dead person is not interacting with the funeral. So we want to think about the individuals that interacted with the funeral, because there's clues, who, if you can find out we'll talk about some ways to find out who attended, who was a part of the service, and things of that type. Those are clues to solving your ancestral puzzle, more than just who's in the casket.
Now, interestingly enough, in the church that I grew up in, the fans in the summer, it was an unair conditioned sanctuary. The fans were always advertisements for the local Kirkhoff Funeral Home. Always, they were in all the pews. Yep.
Same here. We had the funeral home fans. I think we need to get some genealogy quick start fans. What do you think?
I've got a funeral home fan from a relative that had a funeral home in the 1930s. I bought it off of eBay. Don't know where I put it, but I did have it. I do have it. I just don't know where I put it. Those funeral home fans, they were a thing for a while.
I'm going to ride around and look for churches with the air conditioner hanging out, and I'm going to go and get them some genealogy quick start fans. All right, guys, I love this idea of your quick start. So are you ready to begin your quick start? All right, those serious faces, those are your game faces. You're ready to go. So let's get going with fanning the funeral. So step one is to pick a deceased relative. So it doesn't matter which relative we pick, they just need to be dead, right?
They need to be dead. Because you usually don't have funerals for the living, so just pick one relatively recent, because the more recent it is, the more records and things that you might have a chance to access. We're not going to want to pick somebody from 1680 in this situation usually, but something a little more recent to have some clues to work with.
Okay, that's step one. Pick somebody. Step two is to locate the funeral information. So if you didn't go to the funeral, or where do you get this information, I should just say?
Well, a lot of times it's in the hands of, the principal survivor, because I'm talking about there's usually a book that the funeral home gives you with the service information. Usually in that book is everybody who signed. Usually there's a list of pallbearers in that. That's kind of your primary document, and usually is in the hands of the spouse, if the spouse has not predeceased, of course, or the children, and then may move on from there.
Okay.
And then, of course, if you don't find those home sources, you want to look and see if there's something in the paper, an obituary, death notice, those kinds of things. In addition, home sources are the place to start for some of these things. But if you don't have that, the newspaper, even the death certificate might tell you what the funeral home was, and that could be a clue, just depending upon how little information you have to go with.
And depending, the funeral homes themselves, their registers may be available. If the funeral home is still in business, then you would check there and see what is the availability of their records, and they may say, oh yeah, we offloaded those to the local historical society. And certainly if it's out of business, then you'd check the historical society first. There's also an intermediary thing where a lot of these change hands and continue under another name. So you might have that.
And sometimes they just say, no, get out of here. These
Well,
are my private records.
the flip side of that, like Shamel says, they're private business records, and they're not public records. They don't have to let you access them. So you want to tread lightly and not get in their face about demanding access. The ball's in their court, so you want to play nice.
All right, I'm gonna be
maximize
nice,
the chance you get it. Maximize the chance you get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to locate that funeral information. Oh, and then a lot of do you say this? A lot of genealogy societies do funeral program like events. And so you might want to check with them. And if you're a genealogy society and you haven't done a funeral program event, think about it. All right. Step 3 is to make a list of names mentioned. So pull the names from where?
All those different pieces of paper, the ones that Jim mentioned, those home sources, the funeral book, any paper ephemera you've got, the obituary, what clues it gave you, anything in the newspaper. I like to put, if you're really stuck, put these names in a chart or a table, all the names, the capacity in which they appeared, and then kind of pick and choose which ones you want to work with a little bit. But just to keep yourself organized is a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as a little footnote to what Michael was saying earlier, about newspapers, longer ago, a lot of times there might be 3 different types of information in the newspaper about the death. There might be the first obituary that basically is reporting the death. There then might be a subsequent smaller obituary focused on the funeral. And here's where you may pick up names of pallbearers who officiated at the service, some things that might not be in the first obituary. And then also a paid death notice. And there, hey, he who what is that phrase? He who hires the piper calls the tune. But when it's a paid death notice, you can put in anything that you want there. Obituaries and the funeral obituaries, a lot of times that's restricted according to the newspaper style as far as what they're going to print or not. But the death notice you're paying for, you can put in anything.
And to follow up on that, for one more potential thing in the newspaper, particularly in small weeklies in rural areas, there might be in the gossip columns, there might be a mention of who was in town for the funeral. And again, those are people that interacted with the funeral. Those are people you're going to want to write those names down and keep track of those names. And the thing to remember is, we'll see in one of the examples, the newspaper won't always say how they were related to the deceased. And that can be frustrating, but we've got to remember, most people reading that paper in that time period knew how they were related. And the news wasn't that they were related. The news was that they were there.
They're dead. Okay, gotcha.
They came to visit. That was the news. And the newspaper tries not to print things that are common knowledge, if you think about it for a second. So it can be frustrating, though. We'd like them to say how they were related, but the newspaper often won't tell you that. That's going to be on you to figure that out.
All right, so make that list, check it twice, and then go to step 4. Determine relationships to the deceased. And so this is when the research comes in, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It might be the probate. of the person. It might be searching back censuses to see who were in households, to see who were neighbors. It may be doing other newspaper searches, like, say, of a wedding involving a lot of these same people, and there they might explicitly name some relationships, or at least you'll see overlaps, things like that.
And you might see somebody sang at your relative's funeral, and you do a newspaper search for Bertha Hufferman, and you realize Bertha sang at everybody's funeral. So it's not a big deal. Sometimes you might not see that name except at your funeral. That's a clue. If they're just singing at your funeral, it might be a hint they're a relative. But if Bertha sings at everybody's funeral,
that's like Bernie Schwartz in Berlin.
Yeah,
She used to sing at everybody's funeral. My cousin Patsy Toomer, Washington, she sung at everybody's funeral.
There's one relative, and I don't even want to search for him in the newspapers because he sang and his wife played the organ, and at every, not just for relatives, at every, you got to have Bill and Margaret do this, whatever, and
or Patsy and Bernie. All right,
exactly.
So
I just like that Bertha Hooferman. Yeah.
I know. I like Bertha Hooferman. I want her to sing at my funeral. She's still around.
got a nice deep voice, but she can hit all those notes.
Well, I do.
Bertha's gonna have a.
Yeah. I do have a rule though. See, at my mother's funeral, there was a cousin of mine. I won't go into all the details, but I knew that she had been commissioned to sing "Oh Jesus, I Have Promised" at my mother's funeral, and I had agreed. Okay, whatever. And so then we're with the funeral director, and the cousin pipes up and says, "Well, Oh Jesus, I Have Promised" has 6 verses. 3.
Keep it down to 3, Bertha Hufferman.
Bertha, I might have allowed to have 4. But,
all right, step 5 is to wash, rinse, and repeat. So let's look at what you have here. You guys always have amazing examples. Let's see what we have here.
Well, this is from the death of my mother, and I actually saved the sympathy cards, and this is another thing that, if we want to call it funeral paraphernalia,
artifacts,
artifacts, and then this shows not this is an even broader number of people. Because a lot of these people, the whole reason they were sending a sympathy card is they weren't going to be able to make the funeral. So this is a larger group, and interesting. Really expands the fan club, so to say.
Yes, that definitely expands the fan club.
And then this is the basic funeral card. And the only name it actually gives, other than my mother's, is it gives the name of the officiating clergy, and gives you the name of the funeral home. I don't recommend them, but that's another story.
I can't even get my hand to click next. Okay.
And then this is the card along with the book in the background, and then that book is going to have the names of the pallbearers. It has it was the guest book for the viewing and the funeral, so I have all the names there of everybody who came to those services. So
rarely seen one of these books in people's papers. I guess I haven't looked enough, but yeah, this would be a great find.
Well, and I mean, this is the sort of thing that is going to be a one of a kind, and it's a matter of then, who am I going to give it to? So
you're going to give it to Berks County Historical Society.
Maybe so.
This one. What's this, Jim?
Oh, that's what. Well, my mother died in the winter time, and so we had the service, and we were dodging snowstorms and everything. So then the next summer, in honor of what would have been her birthday, and in honor of the fact that she loved California hamburgers,
Mm.
I had this massive cookout for in her memory. And of course, you're going to ask me, do I have a list of everybody who came to that? No, I don't. I do,
No.
I do have pictures from it, and those pictures I tried to get of everybody around there, so I could probably reconstruct it. And yes, I probably should do that sooner rather than later.
And what's a California burger?
A California burger basically is everything but cheese.
Okay.
A tomato slice, some lettuce, all the liquid, semi-liquid condiments, pickle, everything
But
stacked up
cheese.
high. She could barely get
Okay.
the thing in her mouth when she got.
Dagwood Bumstead's daughter, maybe.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Thank you, Jim. I love that your mom's party. I love that. Miguel.
Okay, this is a funeral of 1962, and all it did was it just said the services. It mentioned the name of all the pallbearers, and this was helpful for me because when I found this by searching not for my aunt but my uncle, who's one of the pallbearers, and it turns out the men are all related, but it took me a little while to figure that out. I wasn't aware of how they were related until
Oh.
I had to do a little bit of because the woman had no children. These are all nephews that are pallbearers. And the other thing is, it told me they were alive. Anna was not, but they told me the pallbearers were alive in February of 1962 when they were pallbearers at the funeral. It was also a clue they probably lived close enough to do that. That was kind of speculation on my part.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
we think about it for a hot second, there's even a residential clue of them potentially. They could have driven a distance, but I'm kind of guessing they were close at
Okay.
that point in time.
Cool. Lots of
The,
intel on something
right,
seemingly so simple.
right. Because you want to research those people. And this one's a little bit earlier. This one's hard to read, but this is one. It's a great obituary for 1888 because it gives a lot of information in a short amount of time. There's not a lot of what I call fluff like you have in some obituaries. But at the bottom, it's kind of hard to read, but it says Conrad and Anna of near Nauvoo and Henry and his wife and Mrs. Haas of Warsaw were in attendance. It does not say who those individuals are at all, but you always want to look for those kind of references because in this case, it turns out they're her brothers and her mother. It doesn't
Oh.
say that in the obituary at all, but the thing is, it goes back to the point of reference that everybody knew that when they read that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's her mother and her second husband because they were divorced, and the kids she had with her second husband. So her stepfather isn't there, but all her half siblings and her mother are attending, and some spouses. But the relationships are not given. So you really want to look at those. And sometimes it'll be right there with the death notice, the obituary. Sometimes it might appear a week later in a separate place. You always want to look and see in those papers for those kinfolk from out of town that are making the trek to the funeral. Because it was February, it's 1888, it's in Illinois. Some of those people are making a 30-mile trip at that point in time. So you don't do that for somebody you knew for a short amount of time. You got to keep things.
And also we don't think about looking for stuff after the funeral. It's always before the funeral. So I think that's probably like one of the big nuggets for me here is go past the date. And did you say it was further than a couple of weeks that this came out?
This was probably 2 or 3 weeks. No, it was a few days after her funeral. I think this actually.
Okay.
I've seen others where it was 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. Especially there might be a write-up of who was in town to visit in the gossip column when it comes out a little bit later sometimes. So you always want to look. I always go at least a month after the person died to see if there's any follow-up visits or whatever mentioned in those gossip.
Okay, I like that. Go 30 days forward. I like that.
In urban areas, not so long, but in rural areas, I would do that. Yeah,
And a lot of those rural newspapers are going to be weekly, so you're talking
exactly, exactly.
four issues that you
Yeah.
have to go through.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Let's see. What else does Michael have?
Well, this is a funeral book just like the one Jim had, except this one does have the casket bearers. Um, I have to look and see. They're all their relatives or neighbors in this case. This is a cousin of my grandfather. Um, but you want to look at
When you
the
guys are saying funeral book, you mean the program, right?
program. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this isn't the. If it's a church funeral, there's a separate church bulletin program. This is just a little. I call it the souvenir thing people get.
Okay.
It kind of depends on, as different areas have kind of different, what I call common practices, but this was probably in the church, and there was probably, in addition to this thing at the funeral home, there was a pamphlet at the church that had the service in it, with the obituary and whatnot.
Gotcha. Like that. This is my favorite. This is
This
Jim's
was your favorite
favorite.
one? Yeah, I happened to have a few. Relatives sent me some of these. This was when my uncle died. The thank you card that was sent to a relative, and I ended up with some of these. When my Uncle John died, this person must have given a salad and a pie. Um, don't know who wrote it, but they gave just the weird things that we sometimes collect. Um, but what you should do if you find something like that, which I haven't done here, which I should indicate the provenance and who had that, because that gives a little more context to it than I have right here.
Yes,
To whom it was sent.
definitely.
To whom it was sent.
I wonder what kind of pie that was. It's making me hungry. So these are great. I love your examples. Any other thoughts on fanning the funeral?
I want to know what the salad dressing was for that.
The salad was probably a Jello salad with fruit in it.
What was this? The 70s, the 60s, or the 70s?
It was probably the 60s. I'd have to go look and see when Uncle John died. Probably the early 60s.
Jim wants to go make a Jello move right now. I could see he's like, get this quick part over with. All right, guys, thank you so much for that. Let's go through the steps for fanning the funeral. Step 1, pick the deceased relative. Step 2, you want to locate all the funeral information. Step 3, you want to make a list of the names mentioned. Step 4, determine relationships to the deceased. That's the fun part. Step 5 is to analyze and compare. I don't know where that wash, rinse, and repeat came from, but yeah. So Jim and Michael, thank you so much for your quick start. All right, let's get ready for our next guest. All right, we are so excited to have this special guest here today. She's my sunshine. Every time I see her, I just want to smile. So for those of you who know and those of you who don't, today we have Tammy Ozier here today. Tammy, you are are you still a president of a genealogy group?
No, I am not the president of the local chapter anymore. I'm the recording secretary for the Atlanta chapter of OGS, and I'm also one of the national directors of the organization.
All right, so you keeping a foot in, I see.
Yes, I'm trying. I'm trying.
Genealogy volunteerism.
Yes.
So, Tammy, I'm so happy you're here, and I would love for you to share your genealogy story. How'd you get started, and when did you know you were hooked?
Yeah. So I like this. The story is when I was in college, I was dating this guy, and both he and I were really into African and African American history, and that's all we would talk about. We would talk about the heroes and sheroes of African history. And one Christmas, his brother my boyfriend's brother was in town, and he was saying, "Well, what about your own history?" And asked, "Hey, do you know your grandparents' names?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I know my grandparents' names." But then he went on and asked, "What about your great grandparents? What about their siblings? What about?" And he was just asking all these questions that I had no idea. So he actually gave me a chart where I could record my grandparents' siblings, and my great grandparents and their siblings. And my mother was able to give me that information for both, her side, and my father, who was deceased at the time, his side of the family. And so now I had this document, so no one would ever catch me without knowing that. And my mother even gave me nicknames, so that was one good thing that I still have to this day. So that was how I really got started. Now, I mean, that was a start, but I kind of kept that for a long time. I think I kind of count two dates when I really got the bug. In 2000, I was going home to Louisiana, which is where I was born, but not where I grew up. And I had a 3x5 little notebook. And I said, I'm going to document anything, any questions. I'm going to ask my aunts and uncles and cousins all the
Nice.
questions. And I really just wrote it down. One of the things that I wrote down even was where my father was buried. He did not have a headstone, but my
Oh,
aunt was able to show me specifically where he and my grandmother were buried. And I actually wrote or drew out a diagram. And so that was 2000, the summer of 2000. So that's when I got the bug. But when I
mm,
really started going to classes and learning this for real was in 2016 at my first
oh.
hogs conference. And that was the first class where I actually start taking a genealogy class and start really learning how to do this stuff for real.
All right. August will do that to you.
Yeah.
That'll do it. You go to one of their conferences and you're like, yo, I'm in
Yeah.
this. I'm in this to win it. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Tammy, thank you so much. And thank you for bringing this really cool quick start to us. I'm going to bring up the title and you could kind of maybe, this is another kind of fan club one. So let's bring up Tammy today is going to talk about digging up a much right man. So you're not going to tell us what a much right man is yet, but you're going to tell us what's this quick start about.
This quick start is really trying to find out information about someone you don't really know or don't have a lot of information. So it's a way for you to start trying to pull together a story, pull together some information using various records. So that's really what this quick start is about.
And who's the man?
The man is my grandfather. His name was Chester Frank. I have no picture of him, but I know he exists because I see him on all these documents. So I wanted to I use this process just to get more information about him. So that's what we're going to talk about in this quick start.
Fantastic. So you ready to get started,
I
Tammy?
am. I'm ready.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started with digging up a much right man. All right. Step one is to select a record. So, what are some of your favorite, like some of the records that you suggest genealogists when they're getting started and they're looking up this unknown person? What are some of the major records that you think they should look at?
I think the one of the really cool ones, especially if it's a marriage record that lists the parents of the bride and groom, and that's always a great document if you can find
Best.
it, because it really kind of confirms information that you know, or actually tells you information you don't know. And so that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I actually used to because I was really trying to add, like I said, I was trying to answer a question. What happened to this grandfather of mine that I didn't
Okay.
know and how kind of escaped. So
Okay.
so those were the records. That was select a record.
All right. So we're going to select records like marriage, death, census,
Death,
those kind of
yeah,
things.
newspapers,
All of it.
military, death certificates, funeral programs. I mean, they're all the things that may have some information and lead you to more information.
Fantastic. So we have a record, and now we want to extract the clues from the record. So you mentioned marriage records, and the clues could be who the parents are. Are
Mhm.
there any other types of clues that you might want to focus in on these vital records that you talked
Yeah,
about?
you're looking at anyone who may have been an informant, anyone who was a witness to the actual event. You're looking for the dates because sometimes we get our dates mixed up. Making sure that the dates coincides with the information that you already have. The place, the location,
Ah,
where did it happen? And all of those things also kind of lead you. Are you looking at the right person? So you have to kind of look at all of the clues to make sure that the document is really you're extracting information on the person you're truly seeking.
okay, you have some documents that we're going to show that have some clues that you
Yeah,
extracted, but let's move on to step 3, which is to list other records to search. So this is one of the first things I learned in genealogy is one record leads you to another record. So
another.
can you give us an example of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so this one I absolutely love because now let's for example, if you have a marriage record and that marriage record actually lists the parents, maybe the now you can look for the parents being married. So you're going to look for another marriage record of the parents of the either the groom or the bride. So that's one thing. If some of the marriage records may actually state that the parent is deceased. So maybe you're going to
Yes.
look for a death record now that you know that at the time of the marriage that a parent may have been deceased. So that's some of the things. Um, I mean, there's just so many different things
Yes.
that you can find out. Maybe the person has a private or a colonel in front of their name, so maybe
Ah,
that's going to indicate that they may have been in the service. So that may lead you to look at military.
military records. All right. Lots of clues there. We just have to squeeze them out, right,
That's it.
Tammy?
That's it.
All right, step 4, after you've listed records to search, is what questions arise when you see this record? So, what types of questions might come up? What kind of questions did you have when you saw these records?
Any kind of record, I'm gonna look at the witnesses. Why were they a witness? Did they live close to the bride and groom? Were they a relative? Where are they? Were they did they grow up with the person? What other questions you may have? Where did they live? I always like, is this did they is this where they lived or did they live somewhere else? And how long had they lived in that location? Um, so many other things. Did they have any other siblings? If their parents was this the first child, the second child? Whatever the information. So it's the type of record that's going to just make me ask, why is this person or why is this name on this record? And so that's it. Just gets your all the questions, and I just write them down.
Write them down. I
Write
love
them
that.
down. And there's no right or wrong. It's just like,
Yeah.
what is it that you want to know? If you're an inquisitive as opposed to a nosy person, inquisitive person, you just want to like, these are the things that I want to know.
I love that. Inquisitive, not nosy. I will be using that, Terry. Thank you. Step 5 is to research those records that you listed out. That's kind of a no
Absolutely.
brainer. And
Absolutely.
step 6 is to document your findings. So,
Right.
Tammy, I'm dying to show your stuff. Let's bring up these records.
Okay.
Oh, this is Jim and them. Hold on. Sorry. All right, here we go.
So this is the document for Chester Frank and Joanna Denton, my grandparents, my paternal grandparents. And I'm sorry, it's a little squished there.
I did,
My
my thing did that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. But my grandmother had 9 children, and the first two was for Chester Frank, who is my grandfather, and then she went on to have 7 children for a man named who was called Oris Dwyer. So my question is, what happened to Chester after the
Yeah.
separation from Joanna? So the
Okay.
story was that after he decided that they were no longer going to be married, he brought my uncle and my dad, who was a infant, and my grandmother back to her mother and said, this relationship is done.
Okay.
And that's
Uh-oh.
all I know. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So I wanted to see, kind of get an idea of when this happened and when the marriages may have happened. So I actually, to select a record, I have 2 records, both of them marriage records. And the first one is when Joanna married Chester, and I know it's them. I know their parents. I got it. So that's the first one. The second one was really a surprise because my grandmother had 7 other children for a man named Oris Arduin, but I could not find a marriage license. So
Mm.
that's for these two. So in that the first one, again, it tells you the who was married. Now it doesn't have the correct mate name for my grandmother, but that's another story. But this is Chester Frank. It's listing the all of the people that was there. Next slide. And it goes to tell who were the parents, and again it has the witnesses. Next slide.
I love
Isn't this
this
a beautiful?
one.
This
Oh
is
my
beautiful. The
gosh.
ages and everything. Yeah.
We need to just have a moment of silence for this. This is beautiful.
Yes, yes. And this is the second marriage. Now, this one was the one that kind of opened my eyes because it gave information that, and we're going to talk about it really in the next slide. But this is a beautiful, beautiful marriage license. And if we can go to the next slide, I tell you some of the things that I extracted from it. But it's listing, of course, the parents, but it's listing where her last marriage, or why her marriage ended.
Ah.
And it says that it ended because her first husband, Chester Frank, actually passed away. So, and it identifies
Um,
that this was her second marriage. So that means that the person that she had the 7 children with, she was not legally married to him because she never divorced my grandfather. So this is the
oh.
document that told me this is her second marriage. It says that my grandfather, her first marriage, that the person died in Beaumont, Texas. And it also
Mhm.
gave a year of 1937. Now, so now this is giving me some clues. I'm getting
Yes.
some information, more information. So next slide. Yeah. So these are some of the things that I extracted. Now, one little tidbit on that first marriage license is that uh you there is a witness named Oris Ardware. That is the father of the other 7 children of my grandmother.
Oh.
And
So he
so
was he was waiting.
he was waiting. Yeah.
Up close.
So I was able to, and yeah, and I saw this a couple of times later, not immediately, but yes. The next one,
Dude was in love.
he was in love, and then this one, it confirms that she did not divorce my grandfather Chester, that the marriage was dissolved due to Chester's death, and it indicates that he passed away in Beaumont, and it gave a year of 1937. So now I've extracted these clues. So now I'm gonna list out what's the next. Now we're gonna go to step 3. So we're gonna list out now. One of she gave they were a place. They said that Chester died, so I'm looking for a death record for Chester. I
Mm-hmm.
may be looking for census records. If he's living in Beaumont, what? Let me find him on the census records. Maybe there are city directories, funeral programs, and newspapers. These are all the things that I know I want to look for. So let's go to step three. I mean, step four.
I think I'm clicking. Yeah.
Yeah, so in step four, here are some of the questions. Where did he live? With whom did he live? What type of work did
Mm.
he do? Did he remarry? Did he have other children? Did he join the military? And the list goes on and on and on. But these are some of the questions that I had after I found those initial marriage records.
Good questions.
So I actually found him on the census, the 1930 census. The head of household is a Joe Antoine. And it says
Hmm.
that my grandfather, Chester Frank, is a cousin of Joe Antoine. So this is, again, Beaumont, Texas, the 1930 census. And I don't know at this point who Joe is, but it says he's a
He's
cousin.
a cousin.
So that's all the information that I had. So let's go to
Okay.
the next slide. Now, my father died in 1978, and in his possession were funeral programs. And he had a funeral program of a Joseph Zane Antoine. So
Yeah.
I didn't, I had to put two and two together to find out that this, in fact, was the Joe that was on the head of household 1930.
Ah,
And this program actually talks about him living in Beaumont, then him moving to California, and then moving back to Louisiana. So I was able to kind of even track through this
wow.
program him. And of course, doing more research, I find that Joseph, and my grandfather were first cousins. They were
Mm.
they were the children of sisters.
Oh, very cool. So
Yeah.
you had
So
this, you didn't even know, and now
I
you're
did
like,
not know.
ah,
I did not know. So
okay, very cool.
yeah. So again, I'm looking for Chester, and I was able to look at Beaumont City directories, and it looked like they. I wasn't able to find them in each directory, and I see Chester Frank. At one point, they have his name spelled with an S. Other times, it's this Chester Frank, and I didn't. The last three times he's living with a woman, also using the surname Frank. Her
Ah,
here is Cormelia, with the A, with an O. And this is going to be important because I was able to find additional information. Now, one thing about city directories, a lot of times the city directory information was gathered a year, even 2 years before it is actually
ah, 2 years.
finished.
Wow.
Yeah, because here, this is my grandfather living at the same address, but it's the 1940 directory. And when
We know he long gone.
he is gone. His death certificate, which I think is the next document, he died in 1938.
Oh my
So
goodness.
we know that the information is a little dated. But this is his death certificate. And it shows the same street that was noted in the directory. So that was a good correlation to look at the different records and see if it support each other. Now, the one thing here is there is a Cornelia as a
Cornelia.
Cornelia Frank that is the informant. And it's likely the same person that is listed on the last two directory entries. So this was also, and this was interesting. We didn't know who a Cornelia Frank. That name was not familiar, so we weren't sure. But after looking at this, and after we get to my final document, which I think is the next one, I think I figured out who this Cornelia was.
Who is Cornelia?
Okay, so I came across, again, just looking for information. I came across a newspaper article, and it says that Chester Frank is a much right man.
A much right man.
Yeah, so in August 21, 1936, two women, Cherry Hayes and Cornelia Simmons, had been fighting over Chester
Uh-oh.
Frank. Now, Cornelia was arrested for disturbing the peace. Cherry testified, calling Chester a much right man. Now, the judge asked, now what is a much right man? I've never heard this. Now, Cherry went on to explain that a much right man is a man that ain't married, and anybody has as much right to him as anybody else. I believe that this Cornelia that is listed in this news article is the same Cornelia that is living with him in the directories and also was the informant for the much right man, my grandfather Chester Frank.
Oh my goodness. And she was not having Cherry
She
come
was
in there
not
like that.
having
He was a
Sherry
much
coming
right
moving
man.
in on her much right man.
See, I knew I was right. I need a much right man.
You need a
Somebody,
much right man. We all do, girl, I think.
I just don't want him living with another woman. That's all. That's all.
Oh my goodness. Oh
That's
my goodness.
hysterical.
Yes.
Your
And I think
grandfather had it going on,
he
okay?
must have. I have known there are no known pictures of my grandfather. I'm still on the hunt to look for a picture of my
Well,
grandfather.
you know he was fine. You know
Yeah,
he was
I think it
fine.
was my uncle, my dad, and my uncle. They were pretty handsome men. So I'm just thinking that my grandfather probably was also. So I think the last step here would then be just to document all of your findings and come up with a story. So this is just a small story that I wrote about my grandfather after he left Joanna, how he departed Louisiana, moved to Beaumont to live with his cousin Joe Antoine, and then we discovered multiple addresses in various city directories that confirm his residency in Beaumont, including a stay with this Cornelia, spelled different ways, whom we believe is the Cornelia Simmons that was in the newspaper article. Chester passed away in 1938 in Beaumont. And it looks like Cornelia was the informant on his death certificate. So again, you're just going through and documenting the information that you have. So that those are the steps of finding and digging up a much right
A
man.
much right man. Hopefully, I don't have to dig one up, but maybe there's one that's just out there. But no, so I love that. So, what I really liked about it is how you had a question and then how you wrote it up at the end.
Yeah.
Like, that's brilliant. So, Cornelia was a fan. Were there any other fan? And then Joseph Antoine was a fan that really helped. You got some clues from them.
Yeah, Ordis or Dwyer was also a fan. He was a witness in the first
He was
marriage
wait. He was a
and
lover. He was wait. He was
and
like,
a love interest, and also he was also a cousin to Chester, but that's another story. Again, yeah, it just keeps on
"You're
giving.
the men on
It
that
just
side of
keeps
your family."
it just keeps on giving. But it's just good to hear some information because I really didn't have any clue, any thoughts really. The death certificate also and the directory also said that he was a laborer, so he did common labor. So that's also information that I didn't have about the type of work that he performed.
Why was he in court again?
He
Because of
wasn't
the
in court. The women who were fighting over him were in court. And
really.
this Cornelia was arrested for disturbing the peace.
Okay. Okay. I
No,
love that.
he was above. He didn't. I did not find any arrest records for my grandfather.
Because he was smooth. I could tell he was smooth. If he did so, he wouldn't get caught.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
So, Tammy, that was amazing. Let's run through the steps for digging up a much right man. Step one is to select a record. Then you want to do step two, which is to extract all the clues. Step three is to list all the records to search. Step five is then step four is then what questions arise. Write them down like Tammy did. And then step five is to research those additional records. And step six, Tammy did beautifully, which is to write the answers to her questions based off of her research findings.
Yeah.
Tammy, that was amazing. Thank you. I want to, before I bring Jim and Michael back, I want to just say thank you to the genealogy groups who support the show by sharing our email about our episodes. And so, of course, who's number one most engaged genealogy group for Genealogy Quick Start is the Black and Gold Chicago AAGHSC. Thank you, Chicago. And then number two most engaged is Tennessee. Thank you, Tennessee Genealogical Society. I really appreciate your support. And we have a new one this week, which is the Southern California Genealogical Society. I think they're the Jamboree folks. Hey, thank you so much for sharing Genealogy Quick Start with your members. And if you, as a genealogy group, you're saying, hey, I want to see my genealogy group up there, all you have to do is subscribe to our newsletter and share it with your membership. And I'll be able to see them clicking. And if you're in the top 3, I will share them with you. So thank you for being here. Let me add, Michael is still here. Oh, and Jim is still in bed. Hey, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you. And go and find our fan club. They're waiting for you. And that much right man. Thank you very much for being here, Tammy. We appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Have
having
a good night, everyone.
Good night.
me. Good night.